So many people here today. I'm Todd Diefendorfer, Deputy Director of the City of Columbus Department of Neighborhoods, and pleased to welcome you to the 38th Annual Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance Program. I appreciate Mayor Ginther, Council President Hardin, all the elected officials, and the many distinguished guests for joining us here today. Today, we ensure that we will never forget the horrors of the Holocaust. I appreciate each of you for dedicating this time to reflect on the lessons of the past and to consider how these lessons can guide us in the future. This is an opportunity to consider how we can help increase understanding and tolerance and work against and stand against hatred and oppression of others. The actions that we each take will help to ensure that a welcoming community for everyone in the future. Now, please join me in standing as the Fort Hays High School Color Guard will present the colors. They will be followed by the Jewish war veterans, and then Councilmember Barossa de Padilla will come to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Colors turn harsh.
May all be seated, please? Before we begin, if anyone does have cell phones on, I would ask you to please turn them to silent. Welcome to the 38th Annual City of Columbus Holocaust Remembrance Program. My name is Rita Epler, and I will be serving as the Master of Ceremonies today. We are grateful to have the opportunity, under the auspices of Mayor Andrew J. Ginther, to gather together here today in the City Hall of Columbus to observe the Day of Remembrance and honor the memory of those who perished in the Holocaust. This program is sponsored by the City of Columbus, Mayor Andrew J. Ginther, the Department of Neighborhoods, and the Columbus City Council in cooperation with Jewish Columbus and its Holocaust Education Committee. We would like to recognize a number of distinguished members of our community that are present here today. Herschel Craig, State Senator. We have City Council members, Rob Dorans. We also have Paula Brooks, retired Franklin County Commissioner. Lori Ann Feibel, Bexley City Council member. Rabbi Avi Goldstein, Beth Jacobs Congregation. Karen Mosner, CEO of Jewish Family Services. Thank you all for your continued support and attendance here today. Thank you to Carla Williams Scott, Director of the Department of Neighborhoods, to Fort Hayes High School Color Guard, to Fire Battalion Chief Michael Verda. In addition, we recognize the Columbus chapter of Jewish War Veterans, past National Commander Herbert Greff, and all the other veterans that are present with us here today. From Jewish Columbus, we would like to acknowledge the Chair of the Board of Trustees, Liz Shafran, Co-Chair of the Jewish Community Council, Dr. Jonathan Feibel, Interim CEO, Naomi Laub, Interim President and Chief Development Officer, Julie Tilson-Stanley, Senior Director of Community Relations, Justin Shaw, and Manager of Israel and Community Relations, Lauren Nemervisky. And of course, our thanks to all the survivors that are present with us here today. The Holocaust Remembrance Program is in large part about educating the next generation to become a more tolerant people and remain ever vigilant. We therefore recognize the students that are present here today in City Hall chambers that represent a variety of schools from around Central Ohio. We have with us today students from Cristo Rey Columbus High School, Dublin Kaufman High School, Hilliard Davidson High School, Darby High School, Bradley High School, and Phoenix Middle School, Worthington. And now it is my pleasure to call upon Columbus City Council President Shannon Harden to share a few words of welcome. Shannon?
Thank you so much, Judge. And as I was sitting there and thinking about the 38 years that we have gathered as a community in this space, in these hollow chambers to remember, it reminded me that one, it's really important for folks in this community to know this space, Columbus City Council chambers, to know it not only for its work on Monday nights when we pass legislation, but folks to intimately understand that this is yours. This is your space. We call City Hall the people's house, and if that is true, then this chamber is the people's living room. And so it's very, very apropos that we gather in the city's living room to remember. It is my honor to represent my colleagues on City Council, President Pro Tem Rob Dorans, and my colleague who led us in the pledge and who chairs the Department of Neighborhoods, Councilmember Barosa de Padilla. And thank you to Director Diffendifer and certainly to our mayor for pulling us together once again. It is a solemn privilege, though, to be with you today as we observe Yom HaShoah and remember the atrocities of the Holocaust. When I try to think about the Holocaust, I struggle. I struggle to grasp the scale of the horrors that we will hear about. The city of Columbus is just under 1 million people. The Holocaust saw over 6 million Jewish victims. That's 6 Columbuses that we're talking about. How do we wrap our heads around this? How do we wrap our heads around this? That is why we latch on to individual stories, That is why we remember names like Anne Frank and Primo Levi and Ira Segowitz. They resonate with us. Their stories are an inescapable reminder that the Holocaust was not just an incomprehensible nightmare that we collectively remember, yet it was a human atrocity that affected real people with real hopes, with real dreams, with real ambitions, just like each and every one of us in this room today, real people. As the number of Holocaust survivors dwindles each year, the burden falls on a new generation to seek out those who remain, to educate ourselves on the horrors that occurred, to uphold our promise that we will never forget. Today, we have the privilege of hearing and learning from Mr. Ira. Throughout his remarks and today's program, my hope is that you will reflect on your own story and your own power. With the rise of anti-Semitism and attacks on the Jewish community, we have an obligation to stand up to oppression. The words "never again" are unfortunately no longer just an idle phrase, but an active commitment that we all must participate in. In the face of these challenges, we can find strength in each other. Despite the horrific acts of the Holocaust, the Nazis could never tarnish the Jewish people's commitment to one another. I believe that message that still resonates loud and clear in these halls. Regardless of those attempting to divide our city or our country, our commitment to one another across racial and class lines, our commitment to our neighbors and our fellow Americans, whether Jewish, Christian, Muslim, or any other faith, is that commitment and solidarity that makes us strong. I'm proud to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community and remember those we lost. When we remember those who come before us, their memory lives on and becomes a blessing for future generations. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Council President Hardin. And now it is my pleasure to call upon the Mayor of the City of Columbus, Andrew Ginther, to share with us a few words of greeting.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Council President Hardin and members of City Council for hosting us here in Council chambers today. I want to thank Judge Epler, welcome to the assembled clergy, elected officials, and distinguished guests gathered here today for this observance of Yom HaShoah, or Holocaust Remembrance Day. I'm honored to be in the presence of men and women whose lives are a testament to the power and the endurance of humanity, the inspiring survivors. For more than 30 years, our city has gathered to mourn the loss of the many lives during the mass genocide, war crimes, known as the Holocaust. For over 30 years, we have also celebrated and lifted up the survivors, the rescuers. These brave individuals who risked their own lives and sometimes the lives of their families to save others. So this observance is not just a lesson in history, but also a valuable lesson that is relevant to us today. A lesson of unselfishness, courage, and unwavering faith. This is not part of the program, and it will require some audience participation. Would all of the young people here today please stand? If you would, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to remember and share their stories. Thank you. For young people in particular, the Holocaust serves as an example of things that are so precious, things like justice, fairness, and individual identity, that are also things that can be stripped away from us by evil, whether in the Ukraine or in places all over the world. The Holocaust is a reminder that we must remain vigilant in maintaining these rights we hold so dear for everyone. Recent Pew polling data says that a remarkable amount of Americans don't recall the Holocaust and could not tell questioners what it meant. That's why the young people being here are so important. We're counting on you to make sure we remember and that we tell these stories. By lifting up these stories of those who survived, such as Ira, who we'll hear from in just a few moments, we will amplify our collective ability to remember and to be kind, to take care of each other, and to speak up when we see wrongdoing, and to make sure that such horrors never, ever happen again. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, for your heartfelt and inspiring words, and for your willingness to continue to support this significant annual Holocaust Remembrance program. The events and circumstances that led up to the Holocaust were both simple and complex. The destruction of a people does not occur overnight or without warning. Rather, it is a process that separates and demonizes a people until they are dehumanized. The Holocaust was a systematic process from discrimination to isolation from society, the stripping of civil and human rights, and ultimately, genocide. The world was not completely unaware of these developments. Sadly, as Elie Wiesel stated, the world did not believe and the world stood silent. As atrocities have continued in the aftermath of the Holocaust, we are called to remember, memorialize, and bear witness to their stories, and to learn from them and work to prevent the repetition of these atrocities. Collectively, as a society, and each of us as an individual bears this responsibility. And as stated by Elie Wiesel, to remain silent and indifferent is the greatest sin of all. Therefore, as we are here today to remember, and our presence here serves as our testimony that we will not be silent. Today, we bear witness to the testimony of our guest speaker, Ira Segalowitz. We are doing so in these halls of power, city council chambers, where we sit today to ensure that as a community, we will ensure that the silence and indifference will not persist. Ira was born in Poland. Shortly after World War II started, the area in which he lived was occupied by Russia. When the Nazis began their attack on Russia, he and his mother escaped deep into the woods of the Ural Mountains in Bashkir, Russia, where they survived the Holocaust in a work camp. After the war, they returned to a devastated Poland and learned that most of their family was murdered by the Nazis. They spent 5 years in a displaced persons camp, and in 1951, they came to America. After serving in the Army in Korea, Ira attained a degree in electronics, engineering as well, I believe. He retired from the International Telephone and Telegraph Company, or ITT, where he was responsible for communications and education projects throughout the world. His last position was president of ITT Job Training Services. Ira is here to tell his story of survival. Please welcome Ira Segalowitz.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, council members, Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience, and if I can make this work, it'll be fine. Okay. So, as you can see, I was born in Sarny, Poland, but it's now the Ukraine. So borders move, and people get older, and I kept getting further and further away from Poland. And this is my mother's family. The two girls on the very top came to the United States in the 1920s. And the little girl to the left of her mother is my mother. By the time the war started, that family expanded an awful lot. There were many, many more members. As you all know, in September of 1939, Germany attacked Poland from all directions. But what you may not be aware of is that a month before the war started, Germany and the USSR, or Russia, signed a non-aggression pact. And basically, Germany told the Russians, we're going to start a war, we're going to take Poland, you guys sit back, don't interfere with us, and we'll give you part of Poland. So they basically divided up Poland before the war started. As soon as the war started, the Russians moved their borders from the original line to the agreed-to line with Germany. And of course, as soon as that happened, people began to move again. The Germans were moving in on the left side, or the eastern side of Germany and Poland, and people were in uproar. And the population of my little town grew to, from doubled in size. Even though Germany and Russia had a non-aggression pact, and they were going to be friends forever, after 2 years, Germany attacked Russia. Because my father was drafted into the Russian army, he was able to get the necessary paperwork to put my mother and myself on a cattle car that was heading someplace into Russia, deeper into Russia, but away from the Germans. And, one of the first semi-memory that I have is that being pushed into this cattle car, and there were a lot of people in there, women primarily, sitting on their packs and crying and carrying on, and the train started moving. We were on the train a short period of time when a German airplane began to attack the train. It flew up and down, was shooting at us, and the train stopped, and we jumped out, and as we jumped out from the cattle car, my mother fell. I, being a young boy, kept on running. And when my mother, according to my mother, when she looked up, she saw me quite a distance away, and she got up and started running towards me, and then she saw this explosion, and she kept running and screaming, "Was ist der abgelost? Was ist der abgelost? Why did you let go of my hand? Why did you let go of my hand?" And she finally came to where the explosion was. She saw this big crater, and she saw the rim of dirt, and then beside the rim, she found me. And she was shaking me and screaming, and at that point I opened up my eyes. That's all according to my mother. I don't remember any of this, honestly. But according to my mother, I opened up my eyes and said, "Why are you crying, Mommy? Why are you crying? Why are you screaming?" But we got back on the train and continued on, and the train moved on. So we wound up deep in Russia, and what was happening at the time is that the Russians were building up their war industry, and they were moving it as far away from where the Nazis were as possible. And so they decided to set up a work camp deep in the Ural Mountains, and needed people, of course. So they rounded up whoever they could and got them into the Ural Mountains, which is, most people know about Siberia, but they don't know much about the Ural Mountains. It's cold, very cold, and winter lasts forever. We were assigned to a cubicle with another family of 3. So the 5 of us were in this little cubicle, and the cubicle was empty. The only thing was there was 2 straw mattresses, one for the Gorky family and one for us. And we settled down, and did the best we could, in those spaces. As I said before, it was a very cold area, very, and the only heat that was in the barracks was the stoves were on one side of the barracks, and the heat from those stoves was the only thing in the barracks. As I said, the winters lasted forever. My mother, whenever she came back from work, all the women, everybody in the camp had to work. All the adults had to work. And everybody had a quota that they had to perform. But when my mother would come back, this I remember very well. This is not my mother, but that's exactly what she looked like. Every time she came back, she was frozen. She was, she would sit down. We'd put the mattress on top of her. She would sit there shivering for a period of time. And then when she regained her composure, she would try to put together something for us to eat. And one day, while we were doing, while she was sitting there, we noticed one of her fingers had turned black, and it was frostbitten, and frostbite grows. And so they had to amputate her finger the following day. But we kept on surviving. When we first got to Raivka, our clothes were still good. But as time went by, everything, we slept in everything, everything kept breaking down. I had an additional problem. I was growing, and my shirts were getting small, and my pants were getting small, my shoes were torn, and my mother, whenever she would find an item, a piece of cardboard or a piece of newspaper, she would shove it in my shoes to keep the snow out. My mother would barter with other women for items of clothes, and whenever she would get an item, she always went through the same process. She would take the only pot that we had and put some snow in it, melt it, bring it to a boil, and then put the item of clothes in it and boil it. And I remember standing there and watching all the lice and the vermin come up to the top, and that was my fun. Yeah. The 2 major things from the camp were basically the cold and the hunger. It's not that the Russians were trying to keep food from us. They were not trying to punish us, but they just didn't have it. And the war was going on strong, and and they did the best they could. And so basically, they the payment for all these people working was once a month, you get 10 pounds of flour, and about a sack of potatoes, which I remember was to my shoulders, you know. So I was probably that big, so it's to my shoulders. And that's what we had to live on for a month. My mother, she was pretty industrious. You know, she would find roots, she would find leaves, she would find things. And she would, every time she'd find a root, you know, she would take that root, put it on the floor, take the pot, and she would bang on it and bang on it, trying to break it down to you know, so, and she would put a little bit of flour in it, and we would have root pancakes or leaf pancakes, you know, anything to fulfill. Now, as I said before, everybody had to work, and everybody had to perform. If you exceeded the quota, you got a reward. And my mother would always come back every 2 weeks with a little black bread. And she would take, you know, that was the reward for exceeding the quota. And she would take that black bread and she would divide it up, you know, cut it up into 14 pieces. And she would put it on the windowsill, you know, and you know, she would go, this is for Monday, this is for Tuesday, this is for Wednesday. So we knew, you know, that we had a piece of bread for the next 2 weeks. And I remember very distinctly waking up sometimes and looking at that bread and says, you know, and waiting, but tomorrow I'm going to get it. I'm going to get a piece of bread tomorrow, you know. So, but we kept surviving, and you know, as I said, the Russians were trying to feed us, and occasionally trucks would come in with food, and everybody would get a piece of salami or a piece of cheese. You know, they were trying, really trying, but didn't succeed. When we first got to Raevka, I remember standing by the waste pit and saw all kinds of animals. You know, and there were mice, and there were rats, and there were, you know, all kinds of animals in the pit. But as time went on, as the years went by, the animals disappeared. Everything was gone. And when occasionally a rat would show up, and there'd be a big posse trying to catch that rat, you know, and there was fights going on to try to catch it. And whoever caught that rat that day had a good meal, you know. But, you know, we kept on surviving. Now, as far as I know, there were no other Jews in this camp. At least nobody ever said I was Jewish, okay? And I didn't know I was Jewish. I was a young kid, you know. So one day I come into the school area where they kept all the kids and kept us busy. Well, all the parents were all working, so, you know. In any event, you know, some bullies began to call me Žid. It's a derogatory name for Jew. And began to beat me up. They, you know, they pinch me and hit me and do things. And I was so confused that day. I came back to the barracks that night, and I remember my mother came in. I said, tell me about this. What is this that they are calling me? What is it? And my mother explained that, you know, anti-Semitism in Poland and Russia was rampant, and it was not unusual for Jews to be, you know, called all kinds of names and stuff. So, you know, the following days, this kept on happening, you know, and finally some of my friends began to walk with me. They would never leave me alone. They were always beside me. And when the bullies came, they would put a cordon around me. And after a while, the bullies gave up because they couldn't get to me, and it was no fun. So finally, the war came to an end, and people began to go back home. no longer was there a need for people to do anything. No more guns or ammunition. You didn't need that. And so, the roads were just clogged with people walking home. Eventually, we began our walk home too, and after months of, being all over the place, we came home. And then we learned what happened in Sarny. And as soon as the Nazis came in, they established a ghetto, rounded up about 14,000 people from the area, put them in this concentration camp. And then they decided to liquidate the camp. And so they set up machine guns and just were murdering the people in their tracks. This, if you go on the internet and look up Sarny, you'll see many pictures of the mass graves around Sarny. And this plaque was put up by Israel to commemorate, to remember the people. So what do you do? There's no house. Our house, the whole town was demolished. The tanks came through and just demolished the whole town. And so there was a lot of people, no food, no nothing, no work. And so what was happening at the time is that the U.S. Army had established displaced person camps, DP camps. And people who had the necessary paperwork could go to these camps and be in a DP camp to go to a certain country, the United States, to Australia, to Canada. We unfortunately didn't have any paperwork. My mother just lost everything. And so the only camp we could go to was the one for Palestine at that time, or Israel. And so we headed for that camp. And after 1,500 miles of walking and catching rides, etc., we got to the DP camp in Hallein by Austria. This is the great life, the good life, when we got there. The DP camps, they had food, they had heat, they had cots they provided for us. So this was an interim step before you got to go someplace, to a country that you wanted to. Since this camp was for people going to Israel, young people like me and these students all attended school in speaking only Hebrew. Parents who didn't have a profession had to learn a job. My mother learned how to be a seamstress. So everybody was prepared to go to their country. Finally, the Hayas, which was the Hebrew organization that was looking for my mother always knew she had two sisters in the United States, but she didn't know where they were, or where, Finally, the Hayas, after about a year and a half, found my mother's sisters. And they right away sent us everything takes time. Sent us a visa, and we thought any week now, we're going to be going to the United States. Only to find out that the United States had a quota and allowed very few Jews in, And so we kept waiting for our turn. Finally, our turn came, and we went to Germany, boarded a ship, and wound up and came to the United States in 1951. This is the passport that my mother and I had, and we came to the United States. My mother's sisters, my aunts, were there waiting for us. Ellis Island was already closed, so we went right directly to Pier 51. And of course, we didn't speak English. And so, you know, I was 16 at the time. And so, because of my age, they put me into the third term of high school. Couldn't read. One of the teachers gave me a book and said, here, read this, learn this. Well, it didn't take too long, but I succeeded. And so I graduated from high school, went into the Army at the time. Went into the Army because they were offering more schooling. You know, they were offering a year of schooling for every year that you extended. And so I learned electronics, and we're going to leave it here. Thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate you being here.
The experience of the Holocaust and those who survived Nazi persecution are in danger of becoming a distant memory, and ones that can too easily be set apart from our daily lives. We are privileged to bear witness to your story today and to honor your memory and the memory of your family. Thank you, Ira. To honor the memory of the 6 million Jews that were murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust, Rabbi Rick Kellner, Senior Rabbi at Congregation Beth Tikva, will present 6 survivors to light candles. We welcome family members to join the survivors as they light candles if they wish to participate. In addition to the 6 million Jews that were murdered in the Holocaust, there were also 5 million other individuals murdered by the Nazis, including trade unionists, people with disabilities, gays, gypsies, and Christians. There were also non-Jews, despite the grave risk to their own lives, that were willing to shelter Jews that were being hunted by the Nazis. Rabbi Kellner will present 5 representatives to light candles in memory of the 5 million individuals murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust. We begin our candlelighting ceremony with the song Eli, Eli, written by Hannah Senich and performed by Rabbi Kellner. Hannah Senich was a young woman from Hungary who moved to Israel and then volunteered to return to Europe to save Jewish lives. She parachuted into Yugoslavia, went to Hungary, and was then discovered by the Nazis and executed. She was known for her heroism and her poetry. Rabbi Kellner?
שלא ייגמר לעולם, החוף והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החוף והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת האדם. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, I'd now like to call upon our candle lighters. To light the first candle, I call upon Boris Weintraub. To light the second candle, I call upon Asia Grinberg. To light the third candle, I invite Emils Dolkin. I'd now like to invite Maja Schneider to light the fourth candle. To light the fifth candle, I invite Mary Likacheva. To light the sixth candle, I invite Mikhail Bokin. I'd now like to invite Shireen Mehta to light the next candle representing disability community. I'd like to now invite Marshall Traxler, liaison to the LGBTQ community, for Mayor Ginther to light the next candle. I'd like to invite Rob Dorans to represent the Unionists to light the third candle. I now invite Jewish war veterans past National Commander Herbert Greff, representing the liberators and the prisoners of war, to light the fourth candle. To light the fifth candle, I invite Johnny Oak, representing the Roma community. I'd now like to call upon Reverend Drew Tucker.
The poem I'm about to read comes from the Reverend Martin Niemöller, a Lutheran pastor who is remembered for writing these words. But I hope the students would know that Reverend Niemöller came from a place as a Nazi sympathizer before he became an advocate for the Jewish community, before he experienced his own bouts in a concentration camp. The world seems unchangeable in levels of resistance, but Reverend Niemöller's words remind us that change is possible. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.
Rabbi Rick Kellner will now chant El Moli Rachamim.
It is Jewish custom to rise when these words of prayer are shared, so I invite you to rise either physically or spiritually at this time. El Moli Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamse Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tehorim Kezohar HaRakia Mazhirim Et nishmot 6 מיליון אחינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו על קידוש השם. בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים. ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם. וינוחו בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר Amen. Fully compassionate God on high, to our 6 million brothers and sisters murdered because they were Jews, grant clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the embrace of your wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, eternal God, they are yours. They will rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You can be seated. If I can take a point of rabbinic privilege for a moment. For the last year, I have been working in collaboration with Judge Epler, a number of members of our congregation, and Debbie Sugarman and the Holocaust Education Committee of Jewish Columbus to advocate and work and partner with our local schools to invest in Holocaust education. So I want to say to the teachers and the educators who are here today, I want to thank you for bringing your students here. I've had the honor of meeting with the leadership in all of the school districts that were mentioned here today, Columbus City, Worthington, Dublin, Hilliard. I am grateful to have met with your district leaders, and they are invested in you, your students, and invested in deepening the professional growth of their faculty and staff. And to that end, I want to share that in just about 6 or 7 weeks' time, June 6th and 7th, immediately following the school year, we are hosting a professional development seminar, 2 days for teachers, school psychologists, any professionals within the schools, to learn and deepen the knowledge and growth about teaching Holocaust education. And I want to extend that invitation to all of you who are here today. Some of you I already have extended the invitation to, and you should have or will receive this from your district administration at some point in the not too distant future. We do have a flyer here today for you if you would like to not only take that back, but share that with your colleagues as well. But once again, thank you, and we do hope to see you in our congregation to learn with us. It is through a wonderful organization called Echoes and Reflections, who are national leading experts in Holocaust education and fighting anti-Semitism. And if you have questions, feel free to speak with me after or connect with any of us, Judge Epler, Debbie Sugarman, and others. So we extend that invitation to you.
Thank you, Rabbi Kellner, Reverend Tucker, and to all of our candlelighters. We would also like to offer our sincere thanks to those who have provided support and contributed to make this program possible, including Gail Gray of the Columbus Department of Neighborhoods, Debbie Sugarman, Chair of the Holocaust Education Committee at Jewish Columbus, Justin Shaw, and Lauren Nemovisky of Jewish Columbus, Sandy Hackman. I would also like to thank Kroger's for providing flowers for the ceremony. Special thanks to all the schools, teachers, and administrators who continue to educate about the Holocaust and help to facilitate the students' participation here today. We can never take for granted the moral compass of our society. We must strive personally, as a city and as a nation, never to lose this moral compass. The experience of the Holocaust teaches us that we must continually be vigilant in this regard. It is particularly fitting in today's world to reflect on the potential for each one of us to make a difference. For the conclusion of our program, we will walk to the Patel Memorial Park to the Freedom Sculpture created by Alfred Tibor, another member of our Columbus community and Holocaust survivor. We hope you will join us there for a very moving rendition of Taps performed by the Columbus Fire Battalion Chief, Michael Verda. As you leave, please take a flower to place at the base of the sculpture. Golf carts are also available for those that might need assistance. And if you do need assistance, please take the elevators to the basement, and there will be people there to help guide you. Thank you all for being here today for our program, and it is much appreciated. Thank you so much.